What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to another Yu-Gi-Oh! OCG TCG video. Today, guys, we are going to be going over another brand new archetype coming out in Ancient Guardians, the Abhyss Archetype. Not Abyss, Abhyss. Abyss? You're supposed to say it with a snake, and I'm very badly butchering it, but we're going to be talking about this new archetype. Now, if you guys didn't know, recently, or it was a while back at this point, I did a video where I covered the Berktai archetype a little while ago, because I've been trying to do these more non-anime related decks archetype kind of videos and kind of giving my thoughts on some of the cards that we don't get to see in the anime, but adding some twists to it with the OCG. As at the end of this video, I'm going to be talking about what characters in the Yu-Gi-Oh! OCG structures manga, because this is the best chance we're going to see it in a piece of Yu-Gi-Oh! Media, what this Abhyss archetype is going to be, who's going to use it is basically what I'm saying. So I hope you guys enjoy. We're going to be covering these cards and then we'll go into that. So without further ado, guys, let's not waste any more time and let's get right into it. And before I just start, I want to just say, though, like, looking through these cards, I didn't read the effects. This is another one of these situations where I'm just reading these blind. But I will say, though, I love the design of these monsters. I think they're really cool. Also, these monsters are reptiles. They are reptile-type monsters, which, if anyone has been in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Community for a while, knows that reptiles are definitely one of the most forgettable archetypes. Like, they barely have support for reptile types, and that sucks, because I think there is some pretty cool stuff. And I want to mention one card. I'm not going to read its effect or like really talk about it, but in this set as well, we're getting Snake Rain, which is a pretty old card. I don't remember when this card was released, but it has to be for a while. I think it was around the time where what was that? I can't remember. It was the card that Viper used. I can't remember. It's the Deity of Snakes card. I think that's around the time that this card came out. I could be completely wrong in that. I just know it's a old card. Basically, what it does is it lets you send 4 reptile monsters from your deck to the graveyard. But it is coming out in this Ancient Guardians set as well, so I think that's pretty cool as well. But I just wanted to kind of quickly mention that. But that's actually get into the monsters, the point of this video. So the first one we're going to be going over is Null, Dreg of the Abhyss. It is a light reptile effect monster, level 4 with 0 attack and 0 defense. You can only use this card's name first and second effects once per turn each. You can send this card from your hand to the graveyard, send 1 dark reptile monster from your deck to the graveyard. And its second effect, if you control no monsters or you control Abhyss monster, you can special summon this card from your graveyard, but banish it when it leaves the field. You cannot special summon monsters while this card is special summoned by this effect in the monster zone, except reptile monsters. So obviously this deck is going to basically restrict you with reptile monsters, which I'm pretty sure this deck you're going to really focus on reptiles anyway, but it lets you get to send a dark attribute monster to your graveyard, which, looking at this right now, literally in the next card, Nahil, I believe that's how you pronounce it, is a dark attribute monster, so you could potentially send that to the graveyard. I'm literally looking at that because I literally don't know that much about reptiles, like in terms of monsters, because again, there's been barely any, so it's just like really hard to remember them. But you get to send that to the graveyard, and since this card is sent to your graveyard, which I don't think this is on the this is not on the field, this is in your hand. So you send this card from your hand to the graveyard, normal summon 1 Abhyss monster, and you basically get this monster out. So potentially you can go into well, it restricts you then from going into other reptiles, which I don't think there's like reptile. Well, no, there's an Xyz monster. There's a rank 4 Xyz monster you can go into. Like, if you're able to, let's say you have this card in the graveyard, and you had another one of these Nihil on your hand, you can basically play this card and go into the Xyz summon of the Xyz reptile. I don't remember the name of it. I'll probably like put it up a little bit later. I'll actually, you know what? I'll put it up right now. King of Feral Imps is the card that I'm thinking about. It's a reptile Xyz monster where you can detach an Xyz material from this card and add a reptile monster from your deck to your hand. Oh, so that's going to help as well, so you can search for more reptiles to get into your hand. So that's a pretty good way. You can actually get out a pretty easy Exceed Summon monster right off the bat right there. So I think that's a pretty decent effect, to be completely honest. I mean, the effect is not broken or anything, but I think it actually has a pretty cool effect. And in being able to get into this monster and add some more reptiles, so where you can make more plays, I see some pretty good potential in that card, and I really do like that card a lot. It looks amazing, by the way. I love the design of this monster. Honestly, all of them, but I'll get into my favorite one a little bit later on. Up next, the actual card I kept referencing and I didn't even show you guys, I realized that, was Nihil Dreg of the Abyss. It is a Dark Reptile effect, level 4, 0 attack and 2,000 defense. I am noticing something with these, and looking a little bit lower, well, a little bit lower is a little bit better, but these first two, in terms of attack points, suck. Like, these are basically gonna probably just be wall. Well, not even this, Null is really good in terms of the attack points. That's the only thing that's carrying them down so far. I didn't even pay attention to the attack points, and I literally just read them. You can only use it's the same thing. I think they all have that clause where it has a first and second effect, so I'll just skip that part. You can send this card from your hand to the graveyard, send one light reptile monster from your deck to the graveyard. Okay, it literally just has the same effect as the last one, which I'm pretty sure that there is a kind of combo with this with 2 dragon monsters. I believe they're like, it's like white wyvern and like dark claw. It's something like that. I know there's a synergy with 2 dragon monsters, so they kind of have that kind of similar effect where they send their opposite attributes to the graveyard to basically get those cards onto the field. Well, in terms of the dragons, this one is just sending them to the graveyard to prepare for late. Well, you send this card from your deck to the graveyard to add it. The other one is for actually summoning it by sending one to the graveyard. So, little difference there, but it basically is around the same thing no matter what. And the second effect is, if this card is normal or special summon, you can add one Abhyss spell and trap card from your deck to your hand. So you get to add an Abhyss spell and trap card. I don't know if that's going to be very useful. We have to wait until we actually read the spell and trap cards to see if it's worth searching those cards. I would have loved if it was just regular spell and trap cards and not just Abhyss related or Abhyss spell and trap card, but hey, you know what? It might be good if the spell and trap cards are worth it, and we'll just have to wait and see. But pretty interesting monsters to say the least. Not as impressive for the first 2. I mean, they seem pretty okay, but like they're just in the mid, I feel like. But I could be completely wrong. Maybe these cards are broken. I don't know. Again, I don't play the meta, but casually, I don't know. It looks interesting, but I don't know. They just seem like okay effects, in my opinion. The next card on the list is, what, Floggy? How in the world these names are weird, I will say, though. Cool designs, very weird names. Haze of the Abyss. Light reptile effect monster, level 4 with 1800 attack and 1400 defense. And also, you don't have to. It looks like too. Like, luckily, there's other attributes that you could potentially send into the graveyard, so or to be able to add. So let's kind of see what these cards do. It has the same first and second effect on the top. If this card is sent from the field to the graveyard or special summon from the graveyard, you can target one face-up monster your opponent controls and one monster in their graveyard with equal or higher attacks. Special summon the target in your opponent's in the opponent's graveyard to their field, and if you do, send the target they control to the graveyard. Okay, and then if this card is in your graveyard, you can send one card from your hand to the graveyard, add this card to your hand. Okay, so this card is basically able to search that card back to your hand. But this one is pretty interesting. So you get to target a card your opponent controls and one in the graveyard and basically switch it. So if you have a monster that you're having a hard time getting rid of, but they have a resource that they had that you can be able to deal with if it's on the field, using this effect can actually switch that, so that's not that bad, but you're definitely going to have to get some protection, which these cards are looking like they're not going to have protection, so you're definitely going to have to build some resource to kind of protect these monsters from effects like that, because they don't have protection effects to where they can be destroyed or their effects can be negated. I'm noticing that right away, which might be a monster that's in here. We haven't got to that yet if there is one, but definitely needs a little bit more protection, I will say. But this one, definitely, I think, is the better one out of the 3 that we read so far. Being able just to switch opponents' monsters. Now, that might be good or bad depending on what the case might be. But who knows, that might be beneficial in the duel. So definitely a little bit better in terms of that effect. Up next, we got Zoha, Haze of the Abyss. It's a dark reptile effect, level 4, 1500 attack and 17 defense. Definitely more defensive monsters. I think the only non-defensive monster was the last one we read. Well, I guess the first one we read, Null, I almost read the other one, has 0 attack and 0 defense, so it's even, but oh well. So you can, yada 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 is literally the same effect. If this card is sent from the field to the graveyard or special summoned from the graveyard, you can have your opponent draw 1 card. Ooh, I don't like that already. And if you do, you add 1 Abhyss monster from your deck to your hand. Except Zoha, then each player sends 1 card from their hand to the graveyard. If this card is in your graveyard, you can send 1 card from your hand to the graveyard, add this card. It literally is the other effect. Don't like the fact that your opponent gets a card from that. No one wants your opponent to get pieces in their hand so that can potentially combo off of that. No one wants that. And especially since they have to send a card from their hand to the graveyard, they might get a benefit off of that as well. I do not like that effect, because even though there are some benefits to, well, I don't even know if that's a benefit, because your opponent is drawing a card and then sending a card to the graveyard. Now, maybe that will hurt them, especially since if they have a good hand that they really need, which if they think the card that they got from that draw is trash, they can literally send it to the graveyard and then maybe combo off with a graveyard effect. You don't know, so definitely a little bit disappointing on that effect. I will definitely say that. The fact that your opponent gets a draw, and all that lets you do is just add an Abyss to your hand. So, maybe I guess you can get pull-offs with the combo, I guess, but you better hope to God that you have some protection, because you don't have protection, that is going to basically be worthless, especially since they can have anything that they drew, because literally they can draw, say they draw an Ash Blossom, and then you try to get a deck effect again, and they basically block you out of that. Like, there's a lot of flaws that can end up happening, but there are some good causes to it as well, but I'm not as happy in that one. I definitely think that's definitely a lower one in my opinion. Up next, we got Curse, luckily a name I can read. Dawn of the Abyss, light reptile effect, level 8. Holy crap, that we just went from 4 to 8. Hold on a minute. Also, I really love the design of that monster. Yada yada yada. If this card is in your graveyard, you contribute 1 monster, special summon this card, then your opponent can special summon 1 monster from their graveyard to their field, but its effects are negated. If this card is special summoned, you can target 1 level 4 or lower Abhyss monster in your graveyard, special summon it, but banish it when it leaves the field. Interesting. So when you use this, if this card is in your graveyard, you contribute 1 monster, special summon this card, but then your opponent gets to special summon 1 monster. It's definitely a lot of benefits that you can see with your opponents, because they can gain any card from the graveyard. Now, luckily enough, their effects are negated, so luckily you can deal with that. But if they just have a strong monster in terms of attack points, which definitely you could see that these cards do not have any sort of attack points. Heck, they don't really have any good defense either. Like, I think, like, Zeus's 4,000 attack points, or, you know what, I can go a better one. The monster that we were talking about in the Stardust video, that, shooting Majestic Star Dragon, has 4,000 attack points. You could potentially have your opponent bring that card back from their graveyard if you were able to destroy that. And then you have these monsters with very low attack points, and I'm not looking down again to see the attack points of these. I just wanted to be surprised when I get down to them, so hopefully there is some benefits down here, but that's definitely a negative to it, but maybe it will still be helpful to get a level 4 lower Abhyss monster. Maybe for a Link Summon or something like that, or an Exceed. Well, you will definitely not go into Exceeds unless you add another level 4 on there to go for that monster I was mentioning earlier, but yeah, this one is definitely an interesting one. For a level 8, could be better, but honestly, it's not the worst thing in the world, I will say. Up next, we got Alith, Dusk of the Abyss, and I feel like these cards are getting better and better. I really do like this design as well, though actually it does look a little weird to be. Oh, I just didn't see the head for a second. Never mind, it looked a little bit weird because I didn't see the head. Still looks pretty cool nonetheless. It is a Dark Reptile level 8, 2000 attack and 800 attack. Okay, we're getting a little bit better. If this card is in your graveyard, you contribute 1 monster, special summon this card, and your opponent. Literally the same exact effects, but and you can add 1 monster from their graveyard to their hand. Wait, whoa! Special summon this card, and your opponent can add 1 monster from their graveyard to their hand. Wait, was that the same effect? No, they get to special summon 1 monster with this monster, they add it to their hand. Okay, a little better, but they could basically search like for an Ash Blossom or something like that, and then destruct your deck special summon. So, that could be a little bit better. If this card is special summon, you can target 2 of your banished monsters, including at least 1 reptile monster, return them to the graveyard. Oh, that's actually not that bad of an effect, because a lot of these effects I was noticing, they get banished at the end of the turn. So you get this monster on into the field, you could put those monsters back in the graveyard, and then you can get some combos off to start getting your monsters back in the field. Okay, now I'm starting to see a little bit better structure. Definitely a lot better, but definitely in terms of just like the pure Abhyss, you're definitely looking like you're gonna have to play some other things. Like these are just feel like extenders for reptiles. Like they don't feel like a main strong deck. I feel like you're definitely going to need to play some other things with these reptile decks, which is going to be hard because not only you're limited to reptiles, but there has been effects that we saw that lock you into reptiles, so that's going to be a little bit dangerous to look at in terms of you building a deck, but maybe you can pull something off. Who really knows? Up next, we got Aaron, King of the Abyss. Ooh, it is a level 8 light reptile effect monster with 2500 attack and 28 defense. Now we're starting to actually see some pretty decent stats. There you go, finally. You can only use this card. Oh, and this one has a 3rd effect this time. So let's see. If this card is in your graveyard, you contribute 2 monsters, special summon this card. Ooh, 2 tributes to just summon this. I mean, the defense is pretty good. The attack could be a little better, but hey, you know what? 2500 attack is not the worst, to be honest. If your opponent adds a card to their hand, except during the draw phase, you could send 1 random card from their hand to the graveyard. Ooh, okay. So if your opponent tries to keep adding cards to their hand, they end up having to send a random card to the graveyard, which the way that random, for anyone that doesn't know, they basically shuffle their hand and then they show it out and then your opponent chooses. But very interesting. So you can basically get rid of a card if your opponent tries to start adding stuff to their hand that can probably disrupt their things. But also there is cards that can help with the graveyard, so maybe that would be risky depending on the deck that you're playing, but maybe there's some benefit depending on the deck you play. And if a monster your opponent controls is sent to the graveyard by a card effect, you can add 1 light or dark reptile monster from your deck or graveyard to your hand, except Aaron. Wait, can this use its own effect to use its 3rd? If a monster your opponent controls is sent to the graveyard by a card effect. Oh, no, but it was sent to the graveyard by a card effect. Oh, but they have to control it, so that has to be on the field. Never mind. So, I mean, I wish it wasn't by a card effect. I wish it could be just battle as well. I think that would have been a lot better, because then you don't have to just try to focus on destroying it by card effects. If you're just able to destroy the monster by battle, you get to get a free reptile from your hand, and light or dark doesn't matter. Most of these Abhyss monsters, in fact, all of them are either light or dark. So you get a benefit off of that, but I think it would have been a little better if it didn't have restrictions to card effects, which there is card effects I guess you can use. But I definitely think being able to destroy by battle as well can be better. At least it doesn't have it to where you have to, or your opponent has to destroy by its effect. Because I've seen cards like that, and those are absolute garbage. I do not like effects like those, but pretty decent effect. We getting a little better. We're definitely getting a little bit better. Up next, we got the Queen herself. You got Amunicia? Oh, I'm definitely impersonating that name. Queen of the Abyss. Amunicia. I'm hoping I'm saying that right. It's a level 8, 2700 attack, 21 defense. It's dark, reptile effect. Same thing with the King. One, if this card is in your graveyard, you contribute to its same effect. If a monster is special summoned from your opponent's graveyard, you can send 1 card they control to the graveyard. Definitely better if they control a monster in the field and you get to pop that thing in the graveyard, unless its graveyard effect is going to be helpful for their deck. Maybe the combo back into it. I feel like that's not that bad, honestly. I think that's definitely better than the King's effect. And if a monster is sent from your opponent's hand or deck to the graveyard, you could special summon a lighter dark reptile monster from your graveyard. And guess what? Well, you're going to have to do it by an effect anyways, which that's easy to do because of the fact that there was a card earlier that made your opponents and you send a card from your hand to the graveyard. So then if you had this monster on the field, you basically get another reptile with light or dark as its attribute, obviously, but most of these cards are, again, they're all light or dark attributes, so obviously that's going to be the case. You can get in cards, so definitely a lot better. I think this is probably one of the better cards that I've seen from this deck. Definitely from all the cards we've seen. Still just in the okay tier, I would say. But honestly, definitely looking a lot brighter now looking at these cards. And it looks like we're getting into our final big boss monster for this deck. In fact, this is actually one of the monsters on the cover card because this was a deck that was on the cover of this along with Bertai and one other deck, which I'll talk about that in just a second because the card for that pack got released and I'll talk about it for a brief second. I won't read its effect, but I will mention something about that real quick, but just stay tuned in the video and I'll talk about that in just a little bit. But it's time to get into the big boy himself, my favorite design from all of the monsters. We have, and oh boy, this name is going to be butchered very heavily, Abhyss, Ogodobis, Deity of the Abyss. It is a light reptile effect, level 10, 3100 attack and 22 defense. I love those attack point stats. It's very good. And you can only use this card's name once. There's yada yada. If this card is in your graveyard, you contribute 3 monsters special summon this card. Using 3 of your monsters to summon this card. I mean, attack is good, but to do 3 monsters, that might be a little of a killer right there. That might be a little bit of a killer. But this is in your graveyard, so let's look at the second effect. Let's calm down a little bit. Let me calm down a second. Once while face up on the field, quick effect. You can send all monsters on the field to the graveyard, except face up monsters that were special summoned from the graveyard. What? Oh my gosh. So, you can send all monsters, and since a lot of these reptile monsters are summoned from the graveyard, and you didn't have your opponent add anything from their graveyard, you basically can wipe your opponent's board. Now, to be fair, you're also helping your opponents with some of these monsters to be able to get cards back from their well, no, you're more helping sending them to the graveyard. You're not helping send them back up. But this is basically just nuking your opponent's field. But if you get this card from your which if you use this monster on the turn that you tribute summon it, not by its first effect, but just like through a different summon, this monster gets destroyed. So your big boss monster, unless you want to waste 3 tributes to get this card onto the field just to nuke your field, you're probably getting rid of your board just to summon this monster. And I wish it didn't have that many tributes. If it had 2, I might have been acceptable, because definitely 1 would have been a little bit broken. Just to tribute 1 monster and you basically get to nuke your opponent's field if they didn't summon anything from the graveyard. That's not that bad, but 3 tributes and their opponents having that, if they have a monster from the graveyard on the field, they don't lose that monster, hurts it a little bit. Definitely for a boss monster, a little disappointing, I will say, but love the design of it though, and I think it looks really, really sick. The effects are okay, but it definitely could have been a lot better. I think this deck, now I'm noticing, is there's just too many restrictions, I feel like, and that's not enough protection either. I feel like none of these cards have any sort of protection. They just have good effects to summon them. So if you don't play extenders to protect these cards are basically worthless. I'm going to be completely honest. These are definitely not some of the best cards, but now we're actually getting to the spell and trap cards. Yes, there actually is no extra deck, which sucks, I will say as well, that these cards are not getting extra decks, like the Bertai archetype, which got synchro monsters. I thought this would be a good chance to get some Xyz monsters in there as well, but who knows? And maybe which, by the way, I wanted Xyz monsters in this since we got synchro, and maybe the other one's a few. Well, I know the one is a pendulum. The girl, we already got confirmed even before the monster that the last one is going to be pendulum types. So Obviously, if you had Synchro Monsters and you have Pendulum Monsters, you have to fit the middle in there, which would be Xyz. So, sad that they didn't have Xyz, but at least we have some Reptiles Xyz we can use. So, not that bad, but let's get into the spell and trap cards. So, the first one we're going to go over, and I will say though, definitely these cards can hit in the terms of their art. I have been absolutely loving these arts, and it's a field spell. Oh, Depths of the Abyss. I love the name of that. Making a snake reference and making the Depths of the Abyss. I love that kind of name. I really like it. And then it has the first, second, yada yada yada. If a face-up reptile monster you control is destroyed by battle or an opponent's card effect, you can target one card your opponent controls, send it to the graveyard. If this card in your field zone is destroyed by an opponent's card effect, you can send cards from the top of your opponent's deck to the graveyard equal to the number of reptile monsters with different names from your graveyard. Huh. That's an interesting effect. So, if a face-up reptile monster is destroyed by battle opponent's card effect, you can target a card in your opponent controls and send it to the graveyard. So it basically hurts them if they destroy one of your monsters. And then if your field zone is destroyed by an opponent's card effect, you get to target the top, or you can send cards from the top of your opponent's deck from the graveyard equal to the number of reptile monsters. Now, luckily, this is not restricted to Abhyss. That I'm a little bit better with. Okay, I think they're okay effects, to be honest, but because graveyard effects are still things, so sending cards to your opponent's graveyard is probably potentially helping them set up for something. Like, they can just pop up banish effects. And I think of like a new deck that came out, Lair Lust, Tri-Brigades. They banish quite a bit of monsters that play their combos. So you send top of cards from their deck to the graveyard, place them in there, and they still have the combo pieces already in their hand to like rebuild a field. They basically got free cards to tributes because you were sending cards to their graveyard so that they can bring out these big fields. And one thing with Lair Lust Tri-Brigade is that they can basically block you out from playing the game. And I'm dead serious. They're that strong. And they're rogue right now. They've barely been in the meta right now. And they're growing pretty quickly, I feel like. So, yeah, it depends on again, this is all dependent on the deck that you're playing. If you're playing against a deck that doesn't focus on graveyard or really has benefits with the graveyard, then I don't see a problem with this. This is deck destruction, which obviously in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh, if you deck out, you lose, and most players play with 40 card decks, maybe like 42 if you really need it, but most of the time you just see people play 40 card decks. So, it's a good way to send it, but you have to stock up a lot of reptiles to really be effective. So, yeah, and also, it's not... I wish another effect to it as well. It says in your graveyard. But the thing is that you're going to end up banishing these reptile monsters. So, if you don't get them back to your graveyard with your... I believe it was the Erron's effect, I believe it was. Or it was some... it was one of the monsters that lets you return monsters to your graveyard. I think I could be wrong on what card it was. I can't see it right now, but since you're going to be banishing cards, that now thinking about that kind of sucks. That kind of actually sucks because since you're banishing cards, if you don't have that one specific monster that lets you target 2 banished monsters and bring them back to your graveyard, you're barely doing anything with this card, and there is no protection on this, like protecting your reptiles, which I feel like a field spell should have. Definitely not worth it, I feel like. Definitely looking at that for more realistic standpoints, especially since if you're playing a pure Abyss and you're basically going to be banishing cards because of their effects. Yeah, that definitely bites some things, but you could still, it's not unplayable, but it's definitely not the best, I would say. Now we're actually getting into traps. I didn't realize there was actually 2 traps looking at this. I thought there was more spells, but not. But this is a continuous track, Emptiness of the Abyss. You can only use this card's name first effect once per turn, but it has 2 effects. During the main phase, you contribute 1 reptile monster, then target 1 monster in your opponent's graveyard, special summon it to your field, but send it to the graveyard during the end phase. Hold on a minute, you basically get to take your opponent's monster. Are you kidding me? Really? But looking at it, it doesn't negate effects. So maybe you can gain some benefit off of it. I don't know. And if this face-up card in your spell and trap card zone is sent to the graveyard, send all face-up non-reptile monsters you control to the graveyard. Okay, I don't like that. Anything that destroys your field due to a card's destruction, I don't like. Especially since you probably are going to want to play They're really encouraging you with this Abhyss cards to only play reptiles. And I feel like with there not being really any support for reptiles, I feel like you need non-reptile monsters. And this card is going to hurt. Because this card gets destroyed and you're playing other non-reptile monsters, they basically get nuked. They get off the field. So, yeah, I wish it didn't have that effect, but this deck is encouraging you to play reptiles, so the effect is not that bad if you're using full reptiles, but more likely you're going to be trying to use other monsters with this deck because there's not much to this deck and there's not much reptiles, so maybe you can build a good reptile deck and just a plain reptile deck, but more likely, you're going to try to get some other cards to use, but I don't know. I guess it depends on how you build your deck. So, I think it's a pretty okay effect. And the last trap card we're going to be going over is Invasion of the Abyss. It's a normal trap card, and you can only activate one card with this card's name per turn. Special summon 2 Abhyss tokens, Reptile Dark level 2, 0 attack, 0 defense. If you have 8 or more Abhyss monsters with different names in your graveyard, you can apply this effect instead. Special summon 2 reptile monsters with different names from your graveyard. Hold up a second. Hold on a second. This trap just made it a little bit better. So, hold on. Let me count these real quick. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8... 9. So there's 9 different Abhyss monsters in this deck, but it doesn't say Abhyss, it says reptiles. So you can get some reptiles, and think about Snake Rain for a second. Say you get 2 Snake Rains in your hand. You activate Snake Rains, because I don't think they're once per turn. You basically get to send 4 reptiles to your graveyard for per of those cards, so you're able to send 8 reptiles, and you get a big boy like you have this Abhyss, or like something like the Queen or something like that, because you get this special summon 2 monsters. That's not that bad. That just made it a whole lot better, and especially gets around that tribute effect I was mentioning earlier, so that definitely picks some things up. Definitely would run multiple copies of this, I would say, because sad it is a normal trap, but I feel like if it was a continuous trap, it'd be pretty broken, because you can get some pretty good reptile monsters on the field. So, yep, that card definitely was one of the better ones. I really did like that trap card. I was very impressed with that trap card, but that is it for all the monsters. The only other one from and I was reading this on Yugioh Organization, so shoutouts to them. But then the last card is Snake Rain. So, yeah, that's going to be it for the Abhyss deck, guys. So, what to say about this deck? I think this deck is okay. I mean, it's not really... I don't think this deck is going to be meta at all. I really don't think so. Because I feel like there's just not enough to this deck to really incorporate it in the meta. 2, it needs more protection. Some things that I'm noticing, and especially for those bigger monsters, is they don't really have protection on them at all. You have to waste, especially that big ace monster that made you have to tribute 3 monsters. That should have been like almost an auto win, or in the very least, had some protection on it. That didn't have anything on there. So you have to use other resources to protect your monsters. So that hurts it a little bit, but I don't think this deck is non-playable. I think this is going to be a very fun deck. I really love the design of these monsters a lot. I really did love these monsters. Probably more than the Bergten. I thought they were pretty cool as well. Definitely my favorite monsters to see. And it's also cool just to see reptiles in general. Like, I'm not complaining about that either, because we haven't had reptile support in a while. I wish they were meta, because I would like to see cards get in the meta that are new, but that's just me personally. I like to see if cards are going to be able to make the meta. Looking at this, and again, I'm not a meta player, so obviously, my opinion, I shouldn't say it doesn't matter, but this is just a prediction of mine, so I could be completely wrong. I just don't see this deck being a meta. So, yeah, that's really my thoughts on it. And before we end this off, I want to talk about 2 characters that could potentially get these decks in the OCG Structures manga. And I actually have 2 candidates. I'll mention some other ones later, but these are going to be the 2 that I think have the potential of using this deck. And I'm just going to say this, one is probably going to use it. I don't think they're going to have 2 characters playing the same deck, but you don't know in the series yet, but we might have to wait and see. But I'll go over the 2 characters that I think have potentials of playing this deck. And the first one I see playing this, if you couldn't tell from the thumbnail, Misguide. I feel like with Misguide's whole theme, you know, she's the tour guide from the underworld, I feel like this deck kind of fits. Her last duel that we see in the manga, which is in chapter 12 and 13, she plays Dark Lords, which is a kind of like a more dark themed deck. And just looking at these monsters, sure, they look more Egyptian more than anything, but I feel like there's some pretty good darkness to kind of fit with her personality. So I feel like it's not out of the realm of possibility for her to use this deck. I really do see her using this deck. It is a very good chance to see her use this deck. Maybe not the best suited one like Dark Lords are, but I definitely see this as a deck that she can play. And the next one, I know people are going to think I'm crazy on this, but the other character I think has the potential to play this is Tendo. Let me explain before people start ranting down in the comments. Here's the thing with Tendo, though. I looked back in his decks, and I'm going to say, though, I looked a little bit ahead because found out today that Chapter 14 came out, and I didn't even notice it. So, finally, we got Chapter 14, and I looked into it a little bit, and I know the deck he uses Eldritch, and before on that deck, he used Thunder Dragons. So, he doesn't seem like the character that would use insect monsters like a Weevil or something like that, or use cards like a Flip Turn or something like that. I feel like he's willing to do more scary monsters, and these monsters look pretty terrifying to go up against. So I feel like it's not out of the realm for this guy to use these Abhyss monsters. I really do think it would fit with his style from what the decks we've seen, but if I'm going to go with one that makes more sense, I don't know. I feel like Tendo might still be on the running for that, because thinking about his last 2 decks, he's not the kind of guy that would just go for like these ugly, disgusting bug monsters like you would think a Weevil would. This character will play these very terrifying, big, strong monsters like Thunder Dragons. So it's not out of the possibility, I guess. It might be a little bit of a weird choice, but you never know. You never really know. But guys, that is going to be it for this review, this OCG TCG video. Actually, before we actually end off this video, I do want to quickly mention one thing. I almost did forget about to do this, but I'm going to just show you guys the brand new archetype that came out with this as well. Before I started recording this, I actually went on Yugioh Organization and saw that this card was shown to be in the set as well. This was actually the final cover card for the Ancient Guardians. You know, you had the Bergtai ace of that deck, and then you had the ace monster I mentioned earlier in this video on the cover as well. But the final one that was on the cover got introduced. Now, I'm not going to go over its specs, I'll just go over the name. It's a Dormechord Colia is the monster. It's a level 8 Wind Fairy Pendulum effect monster. They go in the fairy route, it looks like. And to be honest, I forgot fairies were actually in deck, or like a type, to be completely honest with you guys. It has 2700 attack and 2500 attack, and it's a scale 1. So this is going to be more of a pendulum kind of deck, and that's actually kind of interesting. Going to be interesting because of not only the fact that we haven't gotten pendulum support in a little while, but it's also the first pendulum like video that I've ever done, so that's going to be pretty cool. I'm not going to read the effect of it, I just wanted to show you the card. I think the design looks awesome. I really do like her design. It looks really, really cool. It looks like it's like a music kind of themed deck just from the looks at it, because you can kind of see it. She has like a conductor like stick in her hand, so that's kind of pretty cool. That's actually pretty cool. I really do like her design, and I can't wait to see what the stick is, but I will not be going over them in this video. Actually, when I looked up the Reptile Xyz monster, I realized that the rest of them were on Yugioh too. I didn't even notice that. I only noticed this one because they did this one separate, and then they did the other ones later. So Whoopsie. But I'm not gonna show those ones off. I'm gonna show those off in its own separate video, so be on the lookout for those ones. But yeah, now it's actually the end of this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. A little bit longer on this one, to say the least, but there was a couple of cards that we really had to go into. But let me know what you guys think of this deck. Even if you're more not caring of a casual player or the deck, just let me know what you guys think of these cards. Whether you guys are more interested in the art, where you're more interested in the effects, or whatever the case is. Let me know what you guys think of these cards. Do you think these cards are pretty cool? Do you think these cards are strong? Do you think these cards are mid? Or do you think these cards are absolutely garbage? So, I'd love to know you guys' thoughts on it. And also, let me know what you guys think of the art. Like, I think they really outdone themselves with the art. I absolutely love the art of these monsters. I think they look absolutely incredible. They look phenomenal. I really did love the design of all of the cards, to be completely honest. There was not one design on the entire list that I think were bad. Even Snake Rain that was on here, I think it looks pretty cool. It looks like basically snakes falling on people from the trees. So I do like the cards a lot, and I think they look really, really cool. Effect-wise, could be better, but they're not the worst thing in the world, I will say that. So, yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, guys, take care and have yourselves a great rest of your day.